Good morning, America. This is Good Morning America. I am Randy Williams.
I'm Biko Hemphill, and this morning we are doing a report over the differences of a developed and undeveloped country. Saudi Arabia, the developed, and Colombia being the undeveloped.
And to elaborate a little bit more on what was previously mentioned by Biko.
Okay, before we'll be noticing Colombia's GNI per capita. Colombia actually has changed drastically over the last 10 years. Noticing from 2002 all the way to 2012, there has been a drastic transformation here. Originally beginning approximately at 6,000 all the way until 9,800 approximately. Once again, we want to recall that the GNI is calculated based on purchasing power. Let's keep that in mind as we observe Colombia along with Saudi Arabia. Before us, we're actually observing Saudi Arabia right now. As we can tell, there is a different tier. Gross national income is what we established as a developed or undeveloped country previously. Now we're observing the GDP, which is the gross domestic product. As we can tell, there's a little bit more fluctuation here than Colombia has. As we can tell from 2003, no longer 2002, take a note to that as well, that there's a little bit more fluctuation. Obviously, it's increasing drastically as well, from approximately 190 all the way into a little bit under 600.
So I'd also like to just switch the gears a little bit and move you towards Biko's information regarding the two nations.
Here at our station, we have multiple workers working diligently to bring these numbers to you. Home-wise, for anyone looking to live in any of these countries, the average cost of housing in Saudi Arabia is approximately $59 to $75 for an apartment and $3,000 to $5,000 for a house. But the currency is different in Saudi Arabia actually because Saudi Arabia is known for their oil, and there's so many rich people who live on the opposite side of the poor, and their houses can range from anywhere to $1 million to where the king's palace is, which is estimated to be in the billions of dollars.
Wow.
In Colombia, $15 to $25 for a normal area. Not many people in Colombia not many people in Saudi Arabia live in houses, but matter apartments to be closer to the city near the jobs. But in Colombia, a very rural area, it's really about 15 to 25 American dollars because they live out on farms and they will have houses. The description of average housing conditions in Saudi Arabia: the rich live lavishly, while the commoners live in housing dwellings or apartments, like I previously stated. The housing and the homes are close and are condensed together, making very rough living conditions in the poorer areas of this country. The developing country of the city houses the very well affluent, and in Colombia, many homes are very small, shack-like, or as the term shotgun in some communities, and they come in multiple colors. The Colombians are known for their multiple colors that they decorate their houses with for diversity. Transportation in these countries. In Saudi Arabia, 40% of the transportation company budget supplied is government funded, so that's a very large percent, while 20% is in Colombia. Mainly these people use buses and buggies, actually. The number of cars per person in Saudi Arabia go to 336 motor vehicles for every 100 people, while in Colombia, only 71 cars per 1,000 people.
Also, I'd like to further that and mention to you the percent of countries suffering from malnutrition and hunger. 5% of Saudi Arabia is suffering from malnutrition and hunger versus 10% in Colombia. As we can tell, these numbers differ because Saudi Arabia is developed and Colombia is developed. Good morning, America. We are back again to speak with you about Colombia and Saudi Arabia. Colombia being the underdeveloped country, and Saudi Arabia is being the more developed country.
That's right, Randy. Today we are talking about the developing countries. Now, a question that has occurred recently is what categorizes the country as developing or underdeveloping? And what I found out from my colleagues is that an undeveloped country is usually being categorized, determined by the banks and how much debt that country owes to other countries. Another categorization of the developing country would be whether or not the technology is expanding or how the civilization has grown as a whole.
That is correct. I completely agree with you. Also, I thought something was very interesting about Colombia as far as their poverty line. In Colombia, it's 37.1%, according to the World Bank. And I think that that's a good categorization of exactly what is an underdeveloped country. I know we have a lot more information we've spoke to you about before previously that actually can identify Colombia as being underdeveloped. There are many other things that factor into that, but I think solely onto like the banks, as you previously mentioned, along with the poverty line, that can categorize a nation as being underdeveloped or developed.
The infrastructure actually would be that Saudi Arabia, the percent of subscribers to the internet is 98%. Now this has been seen in the past with the Arab Spring, as in the revolution in Egypt, where it started mainly from a social network, Facebook. In Colombia, 92%, which is still a very high rate of people who are on the internet. Saudi Arabia has one telecommunication company, STG, which has a monopoly, but it was later broken in 2005 because it was too large and it was split into 3 separate companies. Colombia, on the other hand, only has 5, which are a very small amount compared to what the size of Saudi Arabia.
And another thing that I like to point out that is really, really important as far as our two nations is the country on a long-term sustainable path in terms of their economic and environmental decisions? Is that the situation or is it not? For Saudi Arabia, it is a situation. This country is obviously a lot more developed than Colombia is. And as we can see by simply inflation rate, that's something that also plays into categorizing each one of them also. I know that Saudi Arabia has a 3.6 inflation rate percent versus Colombia's 3.2%. And I think that if we both could probably agree on this, that if we wanted to improve our nations, that we see it best fit for us to improve our education in these two nations. Obviously, if you teach the different people within the nations, then they'll be more educated and make more efficient decisions on these type of things. For example, I think one thing that's extremely important is that Saudi Arabia has a 96% literacy rate versus Colombia's 90.4%. Obviously, if these people become a little bit more educated, then they'll be able to make future decisions for their nations and improve them ultimately. So I think that's something that we can both agree on, to say that education is vital when it comes to an nation. We'll be back in a few.
Don't move after these few messages.
We are now going to examine Saudi Arabia under a microscope. First and foremost, we see the gross national income. It has decreased rapidly since 1980 towards 2000. However, toward the end, as we notice, it has increased somewhat from where it became earlier. As we can see following that, we see the life expectancy rate, which is increasing rapidly, more so than a few of the others. For example, gross national income. Following that, we can look over the Human Development Index. As we can tell, that's been pretty much linear, consistent over 1980 to 2010 expansion. As we can tell, following that, we can examine education. Following the Human Development Index, we see education. As we can tell, education has drastically increased over the years. However, towards the end, we can notice that it's become a little bit more flatline there, but for the most part has increased as well. So as we can tell, Saudi Arabia has a little bit more advantage as it's increasing over the years. Now let's take a look over Colombia. As we've seen earlier, the lines were a little bit higher for Saudi Arabia, seeing as though it's a more developed country, and this is a lesser developed country, Colombia.
It was nice speaking with you guys also again today. This is Good Morning America. I'm Randy Williams.
And I'm Pico Hemphill.
And we're happy to present to you our underdeveloped country, Colombia, and our more developed country, Saudi Arabia. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.